Hello, everyone. I am here with Eugene, and this beautiful ESFP is a teacher, and we're going to talk to her about typology and how we use it in our own occupations. Myself, I am an online teacher, and I work one-on-one with students, and so I use it in my practice on a regular basis, on how I talk to them, how I interact with them. Granted, she has more students at once than I do, so it'll be a little bit different perspective. And so we're going to talk about how just if parents or just people, even students, knew more about themselves, more about their parents, more about their teachers even, it would make everyone's lives a lot easier. And both of us have found ways to improve our jobs and our performance based on understanding our students better, because I've kind of found myself into a niche where most of my students are ESFPs, and they tend to be bewildered, disenfranchised, just frustrated with learning in general. Granted, they are Chinese and there's a lot of pressure put on them. But I figured out a nice little system how to treat them, and they seem to keep coming back to me, and it seems to be my thing, which is fine. I love ESFP boys and girls. It don't matter to me. They like to sing, so it's fun. Uh, it's just sometimes I got to let them be wild, and then they come back and they want to learn, and it's just just understanding where they're coming from makes my life a lot easier. So Eugene, why don't you tell everyone about you?
Okay, hi everyone. I'm Eugene, like Matthew said. I'm an ESFP. I've been teaching for, I guess, 5 years now, or yeah, 5 years. I started teaching as a tutor in a math center where, like Matthew pointed out, in his tutorials, he has like one student. I can have like 1 to 4 students in a classroom when I started. And this year I started teaching in a school because they realized I was good at teaching. I don't know, even though I don't have a degree as a teacher. Ooh, ESFP without a degree. But anyway, they let me teach because I'm good at teaching kids, like the stereotype that SE here or ESFP is being good in the moment and getting people's attention. So in the kindergarten that I do teach, we only have 5 students, but we had slots for up to 10 students. But right now we just have 5. So it's kind of a good environment to be able to use type and be more interactive with them. And the way we teach class is very interactive. It's not like the typical class, I guess, where everyone just sits down and follows whatever the teacher tells them to do. It's a lot of discussion and engaging with how the kid thinks. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Do you think you have a certain type that favors you?
Hmm. hmm. Well, in my classroom, there's 2 teachers. Um, I'm just the assistant teacher, but between the two of us, I feel like the intuitive types kind of, or rather the NTs, no, the abstract types have a easier time connecting with me, and my SJ co-teacher kind of like, why don't you get it? Why? I've told you again and again, you just need to pay attention. And for me, because I know about type and I'm also a parent, I can be more understanding with like, well, chill, he's having a hard time, you just gotta focus on his strengths and weaknesses and understand that even if you repeat it again and again and again because they're an intuitive hero, they're not gonna pick it up the first time, or they probably did, but their mind's like wandering off into the possible implications of what they're learning. So
Yeah. No, I get that, and it's kind of I just pieced one thing together. You're saying that you're having a better connection with the intuitive types, yet meanwhile I'm having a better connection with the concrete types.
yeah.
And so even I mean, if I had my way, let's just be honest. I wish all my students were SJs. Okay, because they're to
That
me
would
they're a
make it
lot
easier.
very easy because they sit
Yeah.
there, they don't fight back. All you got to do is give them lots of affirmation, and they're like, "Oh, you're such a good student. You're such a good boy. You're such a good girl." And they're like, and they're like so happy, and they're like, "I am a good boy. Oh my God, please feed my SI hero," and and but I probably get maybe one or two a day. Typically speaking, I think the parents with the SJ children are able to get away with more and they schedule more in advance. I kind of do last minute scheduling, and so I get a kind of a lot of the troubled students, I think, because I think my company literally gives them to me, and I'm not alone in this sentiment because a lot of other teachers that have been there for a couple of years, more seniority, they're also in the same boat, and they're like, we get kids that are just way behind, and you're like, why aren't they progressing? Why aren't they learning? Well, learning another language isn't fun. Let's just
Yeah,
face it.
that's
It's not
true.
fun. It's not a fun thing to do. Very few people enjoy it. I mean, I've
Mhm.
met people that do. I have a Mexican friend who speaks German, English, French, Spanish, Italian, and he's an INTJ and he just picks it up,
Yeah.
and I've met other friends that have picked up languages really quick too. I've learned Spanish, although I've lost a lot of it, and it's not a fun thing. And so when I get these ESFPs that are coming in here, they're like in class, hi teacher, and they're like totally like this, like I mentioned, disenfranchised, just totally beat up. And their mom's bewildering them, their dad's bewildering them, their teacher's
Mhm.
bewildering them, and
Yeah.
they obviously learn a little bit differently. And when you're talking about starters,
Mhm.
starters typically are like bingers in a way. And so we can like start doing something really quickly. Oh, this is really fun. Like I remember when I first started learning Spanish, I was all excited for about 6 months. And then it was just like
Yeah.
really, really bad work. And just like, when it comes to ESFPs, like some of my tricks is like sometimes they just need to run around. And and so I noticed a lot of the other teachers get really upset when the student leaves the screen and it comes back. To me, I don't care. That's like pretty much a sure sign that they're pragmatic.
Mhm.
Whether they're SPs or NTs, a pretty clear sign. My SJ students don't get up from their chair. They stay there until class is over and they don't leave. And I'm pretty sure this applies to NS. Granted, I have a hard time typing abstract versus concrete what I do because I'm teaching another language, and
Yeah.
so it's not there. And so it's not a big deal for me to sit back like this while they go woo 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 woo, and in 1 minute they come back and they're ready to take their class. I mean, TE Child's very inquisitive.
Yeah.
He wants to learn or she
Yeah.
wants to learn, and yeah, maybe they want to get up and show me their bear. Oh, look at this.
Mhm.
It is sweet. And I see some of them though, and I can't even do that with them because they have their presumably SJ mom that's just like, ESTJ
Yeah.
moms are really the worst in my opinion, the ESTJ moms. And just like, no, yo, sit back down, it's like,
Yeah.
whoa. And so what issues you mentioned beforehand about testing and like stressing you out, and what about that the parents do that really frustrates you?
Okay. The things that you talked about with ESFPs or other, I guess, starter types or SPs that are, they can't sit still. I had this problem. I found that it was a lot more tiring for me as an ESFP or as a starter type to just sit down there the entire day because it requires more energy for me to sit down and focus versus be running around and actually being involved with the material that I need to learn. So if
Yeah.
you ask me to sit down and read a book, nothing's gonna go into my head. But if you pick up the book, tell me what it says, show me what it says, then I'll be able to, interact with you more and I'll have enough energy to pay attention. And I hated it when teachers in my school, because in my school we had cubicles and we just self study. I could do that, I guess, because it's a nurture. I mean, I did that all my life, so I had to do it. But then sometimes I'd start falling asleep, so I had to run around, and my teachers would be upset. I was like, "Hey, get back in your table, get back to your work." And like, I can't focus. And then here you have your students at the end of the day, they've spent hours in school sitting down, staring at a teacher at a board, trying to pay attention to stuff they have no clue or they don't understand. And then they come home hoping that they could rest and play, but then they're forced again to sit down, stare in front of a screen, and it's 2D. It's just a picture. it's not like you're moving or I can see like feel you move or anything. You're just there. You're basically a movie that I'm watching, and it's not interactive even though you
Yeah.
try.
In another
It's
language.
hard to get it across. Yeah, even more if it's in another language. So I guess it would be good if, you have another starter type with enough energy to, project across the
Yeah.
screen through the internet and, really get your attention.
Yeah.
So
My
I
company
hate that.
my company gives us like different personality types on us, and I'm one of the few teachers that actually have outgoing on there. And
Mhm.
so like I have a lot of different things. I'm moving around. Well, most, I would say 95% of my colleagues all sit down when they teach. And
Yeah.
as you can see, I'm standing right now. I have no chair in this room. When I first started, I was sitting down, but then I was like, this is just restrictive to me. And I guess even as an ENTP, I didn't want to sit down either, and so with me, I have like a simple introduction to go in that, it's like, hello. They're like, hello, where are you? I'm like, oh, hi. and so, and so
You
uh,
should do the stairs thing where you go like tuk, tuk.
yeah, yeah. So it's like, and, and so like, I'm just like, do you like to swim? And with SE Hero, I mean, how much do you learn from what you're watching?
A lot.
A lot. So
A
everything's
lot.
about physicality. And
Mhm.
so they might not even recognize the word at first, but they can
Mhm.
connect it with the physical movement, and that helps them memorize it more. uh, and it's pretty much science based, talking about using gestures and using reactions and things like that. When it comes to like ESFPs too, is I also like to adhere that I know that SE Hero needs to respect the person. They need to think of that person as cool, as tough, as strong, as someone they respect. And so I can sense that a lot of my students don't respect some of their other teachers. And so
Mhm.
like I always want to get that respect in there first,
Yeah.
and then that's usually with humor, because they're kids, they're 5 to 12, and
Mhm.
like you mentioned, they've been at school all day long. They got home, and now their mom's going, "No, you got to take an English lesson," and like,
Was that your Chinese accent?
and so it's just like it's a rough time for them, and so I like to get the respect first. And after after I get that, it feels like I can do a lot more. And then like I can show that I'm upset, and they
Mhm.
understand. They're like, oh, I don't want teacher Matt to be upset,
Yeah.
and because he's my friend.
Mhm.
And now, granted, a lot of people say, well, teachers are not supposed to be friends, but that's
Are you
probably an
an
SJ sentiment.
interest-based type?
What?
Are you interest and not systematic? The way you're
Uh,
talking about it, you're like, I want them to be interested and respect my interests. But I guess that's the best way to approach an ESFP or any SP for
yeah,
that matter. If you're gonna teach them, you gotta show that you respect their interests and you know what they're interested in, and that you have your own interests, which is to make a living off of them learning. So if you respect their interests, they'll respect your interests, and if they
yeah.
see that you're upset because you're not getting anything from them, they'll want to be respectful to you and
Let me
listen.
explain this. When it comes to interests and when it comes to me, Effie Child understands people's interests, but I don't
Mm-hmm.
understand why they're interested in it.
Ah, okay, okay, okay.
Okay, and so it's just like I understand they like cars. I don't understand why they like cars. Okay, so I have all this stuff like Spider-Man masks and Iron Man masks and all this stuff that the kids like. I don't know why it's cool. It's like, okay. Oh, wait, also Darth Vader. I can't leave out him. Uh, and so it's just like I just like to be goofy, and
Mm-hmm.
that's just kind of how it always has been with me. Is just like I've always been kind of like the glue in my friendships and things like that. And so, like a mask wearer, you just kind of just blend in with whatever crew. Jennifer and I were talking about this going through high school, and like
Mm-hmm.
we had friends in all circles. and that's pretty typical of ENTPs to wear masks with the nerds, wear masks with the gym rats, wear masks with everybody, you know. And so, like I said, I would prefer to have a nice, calm, systematic lesson with the SJ, preferably SJ
Yeah.
girls, age 11, you know, and be like real specific, you know, and it's like bam, 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 bam. They're like, oh, you're funny, you know, and everything's great. And but no, you're right. And so with ESFPs, that's kind of how it is with them. Um, but we were going to talk about the exams.
Oh yeah. We went on like an informative. Yeah. I dislike exams because they're just basically standardizing education, and the reason they're doing this is because they want to control the quality. It's all about quality control and demand supply. And we talked about this earlier. Education is just a big product, and they want to. I mean, that's why the government is so involved with it, and they have their policies about education, because the people or the students that come out of their education system are the products of that country. So this is
Okay.
why you have Asians with, after school tutorial centers, and they have to learn English because, that's why you got a lot of Koreans and Japanese and Chinese and I guess Filipinos in the States, because it's more competitive, and they can be more competitive if they're able to speak English, and they have to take ESL with people like you so they can pass the test. And if they pass the test, then they're competent enough to you know work in the labor force that
Yeah.
has the demand for what they can supply. So it's all about that, and that's why you have your international tests, like I guess national tests there would be the SATs or whatever, and then there are the international tests that rank, oh, which country is the best in math, or which country is the best in engineering, and all these you know stupid shit. But wherever the demand is, that's where all the students are being directed into like courses, and they don't have the option to develop their own interests. And that's what the tests are for, I think. And it's not, a lot of them is like they're not really learning anything anymore. They're just going with the flow, or maybe they aren't interested at all with what they're learning, and they're basically being turned into machines to supply for what the demands are.
Yeah, let me just mention one thing on that subject, then we'll talk about the commercialism in education, because I definitely have to deal with both. And when you talk about just exams and tests, my company I work for, and I'm trying to leave this off my YouTube channel so I don't get
Mm-hmm.
psychos trying to get me fired. Anyways, is one of the biggest in China, and it's very prestigious. It's a private school, I guess, for ESL online, I guess. And I run into a problem with parents not really caring if their child even speaks English. All they care about is what they're getting their score on their
Yeah.
exam. And so whether or not junior speaks English, they could care less. They're more or less interested in you know, is he getting 98%, 100%? What level is he on? Uh, is he advancing? Because from what I've gathered when it comes to China itself, is it's like trying to get into college your entire school life. And so,
Yeah.
like, depending on how well you do in kindergarten, depends on how well you do, what school you get into elementary school. Depending on how well you do in elementary school, determines what middle school you go into, and how you
Mm-hmm.
do there, high school, and so on and so on. And
Mm-hmm.
so they can add in, oh, junior learns ESL with this company, and he's on this level, on
Yeah.
the resume. They turn it in, and then he gets to go in that high school, whether or
Yeah.
not he speaks English.
Yeah.
That's irrelevant, because in their minds, they're going to learn it well enough anyways, because in China, they're taking English lessons at school and at
Yeah.
home.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's a big deal. Uh, but any other thoughts on that before we go on the commercialism?
No. Yeah. You pretty
Okay.
much.
let me go to the commercial side of my company is the fact that they obviously want the parents to keep giving them money.
Yeah.
And so when the parents bring them money and sign contracts, I want Junior to go to your school, things like that, they want to make them as happy as possible. So even the company not necessarily cares about if they're learning English or not, because their company is also in a competitive state with other ESL companies trying to take their business away. And so you run into issues with students. I mean, it happens every once in a while. This kid's full on autistic, obviously isn't learning, from the same curriculum as everybody else. And they're just berating him, oh, you're lazy, or you're this,
Yeah.
and then as a teacher, I'm writing in, not diagnosis. I would never diagnose somebody over the internet, but he needs to be put back a grade or put back something. He's not learned. This is not his level, such and such and such and
Mm-hmm.
such. And this could get me backlash, then I get in
Yeah.
trouble.
Yeah.
And so now most teachers in my company don't even open their mouths.
You're
They're
stuck in the system
they're
too, like
stuck
the
in a
kids.
system, and so the system's there, and it's just like, whatever. I can't change the system's too strong. No one's listening to me anyways. I don't want to get fired, and so this is, so be it. And
Yeah.
so again, it goes back to that same mentality you have in the world structure. This doesn't matter what country you're in, it's all about the greater good.
Yeah.
And so whether or not the minorities who are not learning properly or not learning the same way are held behind, that doesn't matter because most people are fine.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of a frustrating thing as a teacher. Do you find that to be the case there too?
Yeah, that's why I like it when my job lets me do what I want or they support my way of teaching. I mean, my setup now is like they let me be pragmatic. I teach a couple of other classes outside my kindergarten class. I teach grade school students in reading, literature, and math too. So, they just let me do whatever I want. And I like that. And I don't have to test them or grade them or anything. So it's good because I can focus on, no, you're confused. I'm gonna help you understand the lesson, and I don't care if you get all of them right or wrong. What I care about is if you understand it or not. Like the
Yeah,
other day, I had a class and we were having like some word problem solving. It's multiplication. They know that when they see the word problem, it's like, oh, there are six. These are first graders, but oh no, third graders. The problem had something like there are six chairs in a row and sorry, this is super concrete. But anyway, six chairs in a row and there are two rows. How many chairs are in the room? Something like that. And they know that we're learning multiplication, so they just pick up the numbers without reading it and they multiply it and they tell me, oh, there's 12 chairs. Ha ha ha. It's like, okay, can you draw a picture for me of what it looks like? Or can you describe to me what the story is telling you? And I find it really important that they understand it now at grade 3 when they're starting to learn multiplication, because when they start learning algebra, their minds are going to explode because the stuff there aren't even concrete examples or concrete stories. So if you can't understand the concrete stuff now, or if your teacher isn't helping you understand and you're just memorizing the steps, oh, I just get 6 and I get 2 and I multiply and I got the answer and I got all of it correct, but I don't understand and I didn't actually learn what the implication of the concept is, they're going to be lost when they start going abstract there in, calculus or whatever.
yeah, I get that. And it's kind of funny because I loved math until high school.
Mm-hmm.
And I was really, really good at it. And then I got to high school and they're like talking about, I don't know, different things. And I'm like, why do I care? Because maybe I wasn't having a heart. I wasn't visualizing it like you said. And granted, I also have struggle visualizing physical things anyways.
Mm-hmm,
Uh,
yeah.
and so when I got to algebra, I'm like, this is stupid. And was just kind of like, half-assed it, getting through. But
Yeah.
when I was doing with like everyday mathematics, addition, subtraction, division, multiplication. I was just like, oh, this is really cool. I was doing really fast at it, and everything was great. Um, when it comes to that, and making everybody kind of go through the same regiment, and it's pretty much a big complaint with everybody. At
Yeah.
least in the educational system, is because you have to leave certain people behind just because of the system itself.
Mhm.
Um, when it comes to commercialism, like we were just discussing about that, and then you have money involved, then you have
Yeah.
certain classifications, and then they want to categorize everybody with some, I don't know, some kind of TE chart. And I remember like getting my chart given to me, and I'm just like, they're like, you're really good at reading comprehension. And I'm like, okay, what does that mean? And I don't know. It's just always esoteric in a way. And people are just like, it's always like in some kind of language or verbiage that nobody really understands, including the teachers, in some
Yeah.
ways. And I don't know. It's like you need like the Wizard of Oz to decipher it for you. Uh, it's sad and funny at the same time.
Mhm.
I lost my thought. Can you interject
I'm
something?
sorry. Hold on, cause my daughter's knocking at my door.
Okay, let me
I
pause
just
it
have
real
to
quick.
step out real quick. Okay.
I'll pause it. All right. All right, we had that little pause. I want to go into the future of education, unless you have something else you want to say before that.
No, we're good. You can go ahead.
Okay. I got into online education because I view that as the future. A lot of people will argue against that because they'll say that in most nations, mom and dad, or dad and dad, or mom and mom work. Both parents work, and so the kids need to be babysitted somewhere. But when you talk about the way I look at education, and I look at the way my students, even though it's extracurricular activities, learning ESL, the idea of being able to choose my teacher when I was going through school, that just sounded like a dream. And the fact that the parents can either look at my profile, look at my personality type, or things like that, and then say, okay, I want him to teach my son or my daughter. And then if they don't like me, they just don't have to use me again, and that's fine too. And then you have your following of people that do like you, and that's great. And so if you think about it, I mean, most of us had to learn biology with the teacher given to us. Most of us
Yeah.
had to learn calculus with the teacher given to us. And so how much better would people's performance be if they were able to select, the teacher of choice that best suited their child? And this includes, I don't know if you've ever done any online education before, like with collegiate level, is you have like a webinar, a lecture, and you can just rewatch it over and over again.
Yeah. That's how
Usually,
I took classes too.
huh?
I took university classes online too.
Okay,
So
yeah, and so you can just keep rewatching it over and over again,
yeah.
taking the notes you need. You're not really stressed out,
Yeah.
whatever. And this will be the case, I think, in the future. Ron Paul's written books about this, mostly on the viewpoint of political status, or with religious status, and those parents wanting, you know, the students to learn capitalism versus Marxism, and that's a different story. But
Mhm.
the point of his book is choice, which I think most parents would want, is to choose to do what's best for their son or daughter. And I agree with this mentality. And I think MBTI, Jungian type psychology, all this, I think is getting more popular.
Mhm.
And so I'm thinking within 20 years, you already have it in corporate CEO type businesses. They do type tests on all their employees, and they try to figure this out already. And so now you can have it where you literally have a student's profile, Joe Smo, ESFP, or whatever, and you're like, oh, okay. So then you can already have an outline on how to teach that person already. And then vice versa, like, oh, Eugene, ESFP teacher, or Matt, ENTP teacher, you know, and you have that integrated into education. Uh, what do you think about
Um, there was a lot.
that?
And that was also kind of like a lot of NE
Okay.
for me. Yeah, and I have, NI inferior, NE demon. Chill down, man. So, what I think about the future, I don't know. I can't tell if that is the future, but personally, I don't want it to go that way. I think you have a similar sentiment about parents being more involved with teaching their children. Like you talked about homeschooling before. If you had a kid, you definitely want to
Oh
homeschool
yeah.
them.
No way.
Yeah.
No, I wouldn't.
Yeah. But seeing how the system works now, where it's either being driven by a Marxist or like a capitalist structure of, trying to supply for a certain demand, the system will, I can see how it would eventually develop so that it be meet all the parents. My kid can choose whatever teacher he wants, but I don't, okay, I'm FIing. I don't like the idea.
You don't like it.
It may be a future or whatever. Cool, I don't care. I have any demon, but I don't like it. I feel like the only reason both parents have to work is because they have to pay for schooling and expensive stuff, and they gotta, buy all the stuff or whatever so that their kid could be educated.
Interesting.
And they have to break the cycle. I'm like FI parenting. They have to break the cycle of whether they want their kid to support the system and the system will grow and, capitalist and Marxist, it's all Marxist approach would be there's always an agenda and there's a structure behind it. Society is driving it because society says so. You have to continuously accommodate new structures, and maybe this is one of them, like the future of everything being digital, and you get to choose the teacher that you want.
Well,
Sorry,
what I'm getting at
that's
also,
loud.
you bring up costs and online education. Oh, and so you bring up cost, and when you look at cost of what a brick and mortar school costs with the football team, with cheerleading, with all this extracurricular activity, excuse me, um, you would eliminate all that. And so schooling would become a lot cheaper anyways. And so if somebody
Mm-hmm.
wants to do cheerleading, or they want to do football, or they want to play baseball, they want to do soccer or whatever, that would be an external force, and an extracurricular activity. The public can demand it or they couldn't demand it. And so obviously when you have all this nonsense, we mentioned the commercialism of universities, commercialism of education in general, um, you eliminate all that nonsense. Everything's just about what is in front of you, and so you just choose. Like I mentioned, you can just send your kids to a room, a building,
Mm-hmm.
and you can have just a basic babysitter, just watching them as they take their lectures on their computer. And
Yeah.
so it's not even about, I think society has changed. I can't speak for the Philippines. I don't know how society is there, but I think even if they didn't have money problems in America, both parents would work anyways, because the mentality now is a woman needs to have a career, otherwise she's not a woman at this point. Or a man needs to have a
Mm-hmm.
career, or he's not a man at this point. And so I think both people need to have that kind of status of having some kind of career. Otherwise, they just won't live with themselves. Now, granted, there are some traditional people. My mother stayed at home my whole life, and only my father worked. Granted, I came from a very strict religious background. Um, but I think in the long run, I think this is going to happen regardless, whether or not it happens in 10 years or 20 years, that's fine. If it doesn't happen completely, and the old way is not done away with completely, at least it'll be there as an option. And it
Yeah.
already has been. There's already been internet schools for 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I didn't go to any one. I finished my last 2 years of high school in an independent studies where I went to school once a week, and then I met with all my teachers, got all my homework, and I was there for about 7 hours talking to each and every single one of them. And then I had to finish my work and I turned it in the following week. Now, granted, I did all my homework on Wednesday.
The day before it was
the day before, yeah, that's how I did it. And so it's like Wednesday I spent like 12 hours doing just my lessons and everything, and just binged work, and then like on Friday it's skateboarding, Saturday skateboarding, Sunday skateboarding, Monday skateboarding, Tuesday skateboarding, Wednesday skateboarding. And that's kind of how my final 2 years in high school were. And most of my friends, who were in the Jehovah's Witness congregation did the same thing too. And I don't know, that was interesting to me. I think that's what's going to happen. Granted, I would homeschool my kids. I mean, I don't see why not. I have a degree in education.
Yeah.
Why not? And when you really deal, I don't know how much PC, politically correct stuff you have to deal with in the Philippines, but in America, there's a lot of extra work that has nothing to do with teaching. And most people that do my job, for instance, in America, were just so fed up with the school system. And many of these people, SJs, there's like, I can't handle this anymore. I can't handle having all these different meetings about sensitivity training, and you can't say this word no more, and all this stuff that has nothing to do with it. And the teacher's job's already hard enough. You literally have 30 kids running around all day long, and you're supposed to worry about, okay, what proper gender pronoun do I need to use today? And otherwise I'm going to get fired. And it's I think it's important, as a gay man, I definitely respect people, respecting my lifestyle and, I shouldn't say lifestyle, that triggers people too. It's not a lifestyle, it's the way I am. And so it's just like, it's the FE child, sorry. And so it's just like, and I get attacked by my own people.
I get it.
And so it's just like, I don't know. It's just such empty stuff to me. And I'm a T critic, and so I'm critical of semantics and games and I don't care what people call me, and good or bad. And so that's just the way I feel about that. Do you have anything else to say on that, or otherwise I'm going to change the subject again?
No, I kind of do, but it's pretty much the same thing that I was saying when I was FI parenting it. Yeah, parents can do that because, I just feel like it's not a good idea to have other people teach your kids. I mean, I don't like it that I have to teach 5 other kids. I prefer that, as a parent, I should take the responsibility to teach my own kid and learn to do it. Maybe it would be cool if there were systems for parents to teach them how to teach.
Oh yeah, definitely. That there will be systems. There already are systems.
I mean, in the way that you're saying, like the online thing, it instead of those people being the teachers for the kids, they're teachers for the parents, so that the parents can teach their kids efficiently.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, if you look at it, I mean, what's the most profitable university in America? Last time I checked, it's Phoenix University, and it's an online school. It's not Harvard, it's not Yale, it's not these other universities. It's literally an online university, fully accredited. You get your degree, and you did it all online, and it's just like bringing in tons of cash because they don't got to pay for a football team. They don't got to pay for all the extra stuff. And I definitely see that's going to be the future eventually anyways. When I want to talk about typology in this sense, and obviously you can't.
My phone died. Shit.
All right, she's back. And okay, well, we're going to wrap it up here because I got to work in 30 minutes. But I wanted to talk about, in an ideal world where you had typology as a basic known thing. Everyone knew about it, you know, and it was just taught in schools and people were just educated on who they were, what other people were. How do you think in schooling would be the best way to organize it? You know, I've sat and thought about this in a long ways and I haven't came to a conclusion yet. Whether, because you
Mm-hmm.
obviously can't have 16 types of schools. That would be too expensive and
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
practical, not pragmatic at all. And
And
so,
parents would
but
have to work more.
yeah, but if you could do 4 different types of schools, you know, what would be
Mm-hmm.
better? Would it be better to split it up between the quadras? I think my quadra would fare the best at that because we're all systematic. You know, 2 are pragmatic, 2 are affiliative, but that's not really going to conflict too much. And so that could
Yeah.
work. But if you look at the other quadras, such as yours, you know, the Wayfair quadra or is it Gamma? I don't remember what they call it.
Yeah.
Gamma
Gamma, the treasure, the pirates.
Pirates, you know, you guys are stealing money all the time.
Arr.
And all 4 are pragmatic, but 2 are interest based, 2 are systematic. And so those are 2 different learning styles. And
Yeah.
and you got the, you know, the Templars and you have them, you know, and everyone's either
Mhm.
interest or systematic. No one's really all 4. But then if you go to temperaments only, you got TE and TI, which are 2 different learning styles in each and every
Yeah.
single one. And so there's not really a win-win situation. And
Mm-hmm.
so, in all honesty, if this ever became a thing, um, I guess temperaments would make the most sense because interaction styles wouldn't make any sense. You wouldn't want to have a classroom full of all 4 starters.
Informative tips.
I
Like what
mean,
you're trying to do with the video with you, me, and Jen.
yeah, but we're all adults though. We're talking kids, which makes it even worse. And so,
Yeah.
you know, as adults, we've developed the other sides of our minds and we know how to use them, and it's not stressful to us for the most part, for most
Mm-hmm.
people, you know, and so that's kind of how that is. And so, have you ever thought about that?
Yeah, I have, because it's been a thing since I started learning all this. I don't think separating people according to the like-minded one, I mean, put them in the group where everyone's like-minded would help the learning process. So here's some TE about it. Um, you know how Freud and Adler would diagnose their patients with certain complexes, and then Jung realized, oh, Freud's complexes apply to a certain type, and then Adler would apply to a certain type. The other one is more for like the extroverted types, and the other one is for more introverted types. And if you try to apply them to the other theorists' um, complexes, then it wouldn't apply, and you wouldn't be able to help that person. So in the
Okay.
same manner, there was a sort of theorists, Lev Vygotsky and Jean Piaget, where Jean Piaget, his theory of teaching kids is constructivism, where the kids, both of them are constructivists, where the kids construct their own ideas when they learn. Um, but Jean Piaget is more like they develop these constructs from within. So it doesn't matter if you help them or not, they'll be able to figure it out. So it's more of like an introverted thing. And then Lev Vygotsky is like, culture has a huge role in teaching these kids. He has this thing about the KMO or the um, no MKO, more knowledgeable other. So the kid has to be involved with a more knowledgeable other. It could be another kid, it could be another adult, it could be society or culture, and he has to be interacting with those people for him to be able to construct his own ideas. So that's more like the extroverted approach.
Yeah.
So if you have a class that accommodates multiple types, for the extroverted type, he'll need the other people who are introverted and can construct their own ideas, and he can learn from other kids and the teacher, and they're all interacting with each other. So he can create his own constructs if you're an extroverted type. And for an introverted type, it doesn't matter because he's going to learn anyway, regardless if you help him or not. So I feel like it has to be a mixed class, kind of like a Montessori approach where you have kids from different levels learn the same topic, but they're discussing about it like this one's in the fifth level or fifth grade and this one's in the third grade, and you're both learning about multiplication, but this one's a little bit more advanced and this one's less advanced, but they're learning the same thing, and they can learn from each other and construct their own ideas together, or kind of away from each other and like criticizing the other people and constructing their own ideas about it. So I don't think grouping them according to if you're like-minded or not is ideal. I think it's more ideal if it's a mixed class, but you can't accommodate a lot of people in one class. It has to be just a few people so you can control the interaction between each other.
Yeah,
I
I
feel
get what
like
you're
maybe
saying
have
that.
a different text within a
And
yeah.
it's kind of funny because NTs are kind of guilty of totalitarian mentalities. And I think more or less mostly about efficiency. And so from my viewpoint is what's the most efficient way to educate? Taking the humanity completely out and you just
Yeah.
interjecting humanity back in, you know? And so
Yeah, yeah,
that's,
yeah.
you like, the FI parented me. I love it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's interesting to think about. And you're right. Um, and so obviously having a completely totalitarian viewpoint of you have to learn like an ENTP or you got to learn like an ESFP would be inhumane. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
but maybe we can find a middle ground where there
Yeah.
still is some kind of influence in there.
Mm-hmm.
Because obviously, I mean, granted, I also want to point out that just the fact that everyone has a right to an education, at least a basic education in
Mm-hmm.
most nations,
Mm-hmm.
is this is a profound step in humanity. And
Mm-hmm.
I think people need to be more grateful for what they do have. And I'm guilty of that too. Because even 100 years ago, this just didn't exist. And yeah, there are issues in the educational system, but I mean, most people learn how to read. I mean, illiteracy for the most part in most nations is a thing of the past. Granted, I have met illiterate people when I was doing missionary work in Mexico and Peru and things like that, but for the most part, it's not really a thing anymore. And so,
Mm-hmm.
granted, there would be no perfect system, and I'm not looking for any kind of utopia. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
I just think of the different ideas and different ways to interject things like that. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe if we just educated teachers on it, they would implement
Yeah.
it themselves. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
and then even if parents knew too, but again, then you're going to go against what are parental rights, and you got enough issues with people insisting on their religious rights being respected,
Yeah.
in schooling. And so that's just adding one more huge factor and the conflict of interest again. Um,
Yeah.
I don't know. It's just something to think about for me.
Yeah. I guess people's ideals are different. Like you said, NTs tend to be more totalitarian and I don't know. Yeah, but if you think about what I said in a compatibility kind of thing,
Yeah.
what? Oh gosh. Or like
uh,
you could be like a Roman emperor, go like, get
I
out of my classroom.
uh,
Anyway, if
I
you
know.
think about what I said about mixing different types in a class, or um, and related to compatibility, like the golden pair or maybe socionics kind of compatibility, it helps you develop a certain kind of understanding or certain kind of wisdom by being with a different type.
Yeah.
I think it applies true for kids too. So
Yeah. To finish on a positive note too. Also, if the teachers do learn these kind of things, and it gets to the point where online education is more common, more normal, everyone's like, oh,
mhm,
and then you have the teachers that understand that and they're getting the student, oh, he's an ESFP, I know how to teach that person.
mhm,
That teacher is going to be more
yeah,
popular. He's going to be, more in demand. He's going to make more money. And so the incentive alone will just drive that to be the case. And so
yeah.
I'm all for understanding
I
people
think
better.
mhm.
I've been
I think that's
misunderstood my
something
entire.
that yeah, I
Huh?
think that's something that I think that's something that certain schools, I mean universities that make teachers do already, because in my classroom, my lead teacher, one thing that she wanted to do was write narrative reports about every student. We just have 5 kids, so I have like narrative observation reports of every kid, and we we have like 3 points. We talk about their social emotional development, their cognitive development, their physical development, and we discuss there in a paper. We kind of make like a transcript of all the things we've observed about the kid. Like every quarter we make one, and we discuss the strengths and weaknesses of the kid and how we could better understand them, and then we show it to the parents, so the parents are doing the same thing at home, and they're not just throwing everything that we taught the kid outside the window or anything like that. So I think there has been some efforts, but I definitely think that union typology would be a better tool to analyze it, because yeah, it just makes sense if you know the hero or the way that someone is conscious about certain things.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'm going to end it here because I got to work in 5 minutes. Well, actually 15, I guess, but I got to get ready in 5 minutes. Should
Yeah.
be all informative of every
All right.
my step-by-step process. But Eugene, thank you for being on. I want to get you back on with Jennifer, and we can add in more people. We can have more conversation on this. I think a lot of people respect our opinions as teachers. And which is interesting to me because I know so many crazy teachers and that you don't want to respect their opinion. And and so it's just like that label alone shouldn't be a reason to listen to somebody, but it is, unfortunately. And it seems to get good responses, at least on my YouTube channel. And so, anyways, thanks for being on, and we'll get you back on with Jennifer, and we'll
Thanks,
have more discussion
guys.
about this.
Thanks, Matthew.
All right, later.